So I'm tying up the latest Remnant Fly here, and this ended up being kind of a woolly bugger type fly on a pre-made jig hook. A lot of people don't realize in fly fishing circles that jigs like this have often been used in fly fishing. There's a lot of different patterns that people have done on pre-made jig hooks. In conventional circles, jigs are very popular. They're very effective because they generally have a lot more weight, and that gets right down to the bottom. You can creep them right along the bottom where the fish are at, so that makes them very effective. In fly fishing circles, it's harder to get even weighted flies down to the bottom and keep them on the bottom, simply because that floating line is going to be moving faster in the surface current than the subsurface current. But these pre-made jig hooks are an option in terms of fly tying and fly fishing, and a lot of people aren't aware of that. So I saw this in my Remnant materials, and I thought it would be kind of interesting to do a quick little fly. You can do nymphs with these, or other types of streamers if you want, or sculpin patterns, leeches, things like that. But I just got some stuff together to make a little woolly bugger on a pre-made jig hook. So that's the latest Remnant Fly. I'll get started tying. I'm going to start the next Remnant Fly with my hook and the vise. This is just I want to say it's about a 5/32 pre-made jig head. So this isn't just a bead that's on there. This is a lead head that's already attached to the hook. This one doesn't have much of a barb. It has a little micro barb. I can go ahead and try and debarb that, but if you don't want to. For thread, I'm just going to use a Danville 6/0 in black. Again, the focus on this fly was mostly to talk about tying on pre-made jig hooks in the fly fishing circles. So I'm keeping this one really simple, and I'm just going to do a basic kind of woolly bugger on this particular hook, so you can see that even the flies that we use in our regular fly tying and fly fishing, we can use on a regular little jig hook. I've got a Marabou fluorescent Chartreuse Marabou feather here, and I'm actually going to use this end of it, about half of it, for the tail, and then some of this fluff here for the body instead of putting some chenille on. So I'll clip that about halfway, collect this all together. You can wet that down, which will help kind of control that a little bit while you're tying it. I'm going to tie this in a little long, basically the whole hook length, which is from the bend of the hook to the very front of the hook, the front of the eye. Now, in this instance, if you wanted to, I'm going to go ahead and tie some flash in here, because I happen to have some flash accent sitting here from a previous class, or I should say video. I'm going to tie down the Marabou on the hook shank just to give me a little bit more bulk for the body here. Wrap that down. I've got just a little bit of some Chartreuse flash accent. I'm going to take maybe about 3 or 4 strands and tie these in. I want to tie them in just on both sides. You don't have to. A lot of woolly bugger patterns don't have any flash in them. The original certainly didn't. Wrapping backwards, I can then take this forward section, fold it over, and bring it to the other side, binding that in, and then trim that the length of the tail. For a hackle, you can use whatever you've got, traditional kind of woolly bugger hackle. I happen to have this black hackle in my Remnant material and thought it was hopefully going to be the right length. I don't have to have a real bushy body to this when I wrap the hackle, so Should be able to get that to the right length. So trim away the end so I've got a little anchor point here and wrap that in nice and sturdy. And then I'm also going to put a rib in, and I've got some mylar tinsel here. This is just probably about a size 12, maybe 14 silver and gold mylar tinsel. I'm going to use the silver side on this, so I'm going to tie this in here with the gold side up, pull that back into the body, anchor that down, wrap forward to anchor all that in, come on back. Now, if you've got some chenille, obviously you can use some chenille for the body. I don't have any, so I'm going to actually use some of this fluff from the Marabou. Really, really easy to do. You're going to just take some of this off like this. Wet your fingers. We're going to just set that right on side of the hook shank and just twist that on as though it was a dubbing. I'm going to slide that up and start winding that forward. And if you need to, just put a little bit more twist in that each time it comes around. Doesn't have to be anything fancy. A lot of people aren't aware that you can use, some of that Marabou as a nice underbody or a nice dubbing. Go ahead and take that last wrap out. Trim this away. And I'm going to wrap that all down a little bit, go back, put in a little bit more. You can certainly wax the thread a little bit if you want it to hold on to that Marabou a little bit more. I find just generally giving it a little twist as you come around is all that's really needed. Get that bound in. Doesn't have to be anything super. And then we'll take our hackle. And I'm just going to get about 3 wraps in here maybe. As I come around to the front, I would like to have enough of that feather to maybe get 1 wrap right behind the head. So I'm going to spread this out just a little bit. And then I've got just enough to get a little wrap right up here. Just barely enough. Get the end of that tied in. Wrap that on in a little bit. I'm going to try and clean this up a little bit. There we go. So my rib, I'm going to bring this around the other way and just kind of weave this on through as I put maybe about, 3 wraps in here. I want to try and not to pinch down a lot of those barbs from that hackle as I'm wrapping this in. Easier with a thinner rib material, but this is what I had. And I'm going to tie that in. A little bit longer feather might have been kind of nice. I might got a little bit more wrapped in, although that's pretty full. Again, the idea is you see this leftover material and you get an idea in your head of something to do with it. And that was this. And I thought about a number of different things I could do with these jig heads. basically any subsurface fly you can tie on one of these hooks that has a jig head to it. And I just thought a little woolly bugger would probably be the simplest thing. So that is the latest Remnant Fly. Let me try and pick out a little bit of this hackle here. There we go. Which you can always go back and do, by the way, if ever you're tying these flies and you find something you bound in and you don't like the way it looks. You can just go in and try and pick those out. Put a nice dollop of head cement on there. That will soak down in there and protect that. But there is a little woolly bugger on a pre-made jig. So you could certainly cast that out and that will drift down, you know, and may not get to the bottom. It just depends on how fast the current is. Mend upstream, you know, it'll eventually get down closer to the bottom, but it will have some nice weight, and you could certainly add a little bit more weight along the hook shank under there if you want to. But pre-made jigs are kind of a nice option to the bead heads if that's what you're looking for. And you could certainly paint that prior to tying anything on that. So you could paint that a nice red color or even a yellow color or something, and then put a white and black eye on the outside of that if you wanted to. So that's the latest Remnant Fly. Thanks for watching today. Thank you for joining me at the Vise today. I hope you learned a new pattern, at least a tip or trick here and there. If you'd like to help Dress Irons, you can like, comment, share, subscribe, all those wonderful things for the video. You can also head out to dressedirons.com where you can buy flies, tools, stickers, and merch, or you can join a growing community over on Locals at the Dressed Irons Fly Tying Guild. You can also donate to Dressed Irons if you want through the link at the bottom of the description. I thank everybody for their ongoing support, as it really does help the creation of these videos. But what's important is to remember, only fly tying. If you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong.